Hello, M&A Advisor community. Welcome to the M&A Advisor podcast. I'm Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor. Tune in as we engage with the top experts in mergers and acquisitions, distressed investing, restructuring, and the financing industry. Don't miss a beat. This is going to be another epic episode. As the fall 2024 unfolds, the M&A Advisor is gearing up for a highly anticipated event on September 23rd and 24th at the iconic New York Athletic Club. The 2024 Leadership in Dealmaking Summit promises to be a showcase of innovation, excellence, and strategic foresight in the dynamic world of mergers and acquisitions. This premier gathering will highlight the power of visionary leadership, the impact of collaborative strategies, and the cutting-edge approaches that are redefining the global deal-making landscape. Don't miss this opportunity to be part of an event that sets the stage for the future of the M&A industry. As we explore innovation and strategic leadership, it's crucial to spotlight the voices and people shaping the future of global deal-making. In this context, we are proud to introduce a distinguished thought leader in international M&A whose expertise transcends traditional industry boundaries and redefines business models. Let's give a warm welcome to Dara Shareef from Benchmark International. Hello, Dara.
Hello, Roger. How are you?
Okay, terrific. Well, let me give you a little bit of Dara's background. Dara Shareef is a managing partner or the managing partner at Benchmark International from March 2015 to the present, overseeing their Tampa transaction office. Join me in congratulating Dara and Benchmark International for their upcoming win of the International M&A Award, the Investment Banking Firm of the Year for North America, Europe, and Africa at the 2024 Leadership in Dealmaking Summit. Yet another great reason to be part of our event this September. At Benchmark International, as managing director for the Tampa office, Dara's role is structured around three key areas: the managerial, operational, and strategic. His vast experience as a business operator and investor enables him to effectively manage both the sell side and buy side transactions. Dara earned his Bachelor of Science in Finance from Lehigh University's College of Business and later obtained his MBA with a focus of competitive and organizational strategy from the University of Rochester's William E. Simon Graduate School of Business Administration. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our distinguished guest and thought leader, Dara Shareef. So welcome to the show, Dara, again. Well, let's launch right into the beginnings of your career. So you're at Lehigh University. Did you go straight into your MBA? Did you work a little bit? And what made you, you were an undergrad in finance, but what made you start your journey into investment banking and in finance? And how did that happen?
Well, thanks again for having me, Roger. I appreciate that. So after Lehigh, my first job was to work for Baird Securities and Northwestern Mutual Life. So, not really anything related to M&A purely, but it did get a real smack to the face in terms of what life had in store. I worked over 100 hours a week, made a lot of phone calls.
Were you on the trading desk, or is that where you're?
No, I was securities seller. I sold everything from mutual funds and pension plans and the like. So, really had to build a business from scratch at 22 years old. And it was really formative for me. I didn't really enjoy the work, to be honest with you, but in terms of, foundation, it laid a great foundation. It really, I was an athlete growing up.
A lot of smiling and dialing there. I guess
a ton of it.
But you were, it sounds like you weren't smiling too much, right?
Well, I learned to develop a really thick skin, and I think that's a really important aspect of it. You're building from scratch. I didn't have a lot of contacts at 22 that I hadn't, maybe friends of friends' parents and the like, but they still thought of me as the kid who peed in their pool when I was 7. So it's hard to impress them that way and to sell them, some mutual funds. So what I learned how to do was
where did you grow up? Where were you raised?
Sure. So I grew up in Connecticut. I was born in Danvers, Mass, outside of Boston. Grew up in Connecticut. and, sort of made my way to Lehigh, and it was in the Northeast until I was in my early 40s, really. So, I can give you the progression if you'd like from there. I burned out of that first job. I was working literally 100 hours a week, and after
Yeah.
a while, you just can't keep doing it. So I actually became a sports writer and business writer for about a year and a half. Just a
Wow.
complete change. I just needed a reset, and all the while I was prepping to go to B school. So it was a way to kind of get my brain a little quieted down from the torture of the 120-hour work weeks.
Yeah. Well,
Which
sports writing. What did you cover teams or what? What
I
did you
covered
cover?
looks. I worked for the Norwalk Hour in Connecticut, so in one of their satellite papers. So I got a chance to cover games. I did a lot of, Yogi Berra was probably my biggest interview. That was a real
Oh,
impactful one for me. I still have the
okay.
ball he signed for me. Bobby Valentine, who actually I knew
Okay.
already because his nephew was my catcher when I
Right.
was a pitcher in high
Yeah.
school. So
Yeah.
those kinds of
Remember
folks. A
for
lot
the
of interviews.
Yankees, Bobby Valentine was the manager of the Mets. I was he a
Mets
manager
and
then?
He wasn't. He had been. I think he was with the Rangers at that point as their
Oh,
manager, but he grew up in the Mets organization for
right.
sure. Yeah, so
Right.
I did that for a while, but it was really prepping to go to B school. That was really the end game there,
Okay.
and ended up at the Simon School from there.
Okay. All right. So okay, you're at the Simon school, and then what was your
Yeah.
first job out of college?
Yeah, so the Simon School was a rigorous finance program for sure, but I studied strategy. I took a lot of finance classes there as well, obviously. Decided at the end of my tenure there at Lehigh and the beginning of my tenure at Simon that I really wanted to get into strategy work. I really liked the consulting idea. So,
Yeah. Were you
developed a
looking to
really
go into the like McKinsey's of the world? Was that the dream?
It wasn't mu No, it
Okay.
wasn't actually. McKinsey seems to be more of a place to manufacture CEOs than to solve actual business problems. That was my view
Yeah.
then, and probably
Okay.
still is today. So, I really
Probably
wanted to
not
get in
far
there
from
and
the
help
truth
think
today,
about
right? As far
exactly. So, my view was to get in there and solve some real problems. So I actually secured a pretty good internship at a place called NextEra, and this is 1999, and worked all
Mhm.
summer. I was billable all summer. It was really really helpful. I made a good living over the summer, but I think my company made more on me than they paid me, which was good. I felt great about
Okay.
that, and got the full time offer. And my whole second year of B school, I did a lot of consulting for them, and it really had a job lined up, and it was kind of easy going. I had a
Yeah.
great second year, worked a lot, but also, occasionally attended school and took all the tests that I needed to and graduated and had a job lined up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, and we'll get into this later, it was 2000 and there was
Yeah.
an imminent dot-com collapse that was about to
Right.
hit me right square in the face.
Yeah. Well, did you get let go or you
My company did.
oh, okay. Okay. So
So
their
it's
clients
an
were all
interesting.
like what, dot coms? Their clients were all dot com. Uh,
Well, so I'll give you the quick story here. So I was working for this company called NextEra, and they asked me to get on, move to Boston. Hey, move to Boston. I've got a couple projects for you. It'd be better if you're there. Are you okay with that? I said, well, sure. Love
yeah.
Boston. So I was finding an apartment there, locked in on a place in Everett, 2 bedroom. I was excited about it. And I had about 4 hours to kill before I signed the lease. I was going to watch a movie called Meet the Parents. It was out, it had just come out, killing time. And I got a call from
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the, the HR director saying the company is going away. The CEO was fired today. The company's going to zero. All those stock options that you had that you were counting on getting rich on, they're not worth anything. And the company went away overnight, as did basically all
Wow.
of our competitors, Scient and Viant and, Sapient. Those companies, Sapient survived, but they basically went away overnight. The whole industry kind of went away, and I had to completely reset. I was signing
Wow.
a lease, ready to go, and then I found myself driving
So
back to
you
Rochester.
didn't sign the lease, right? You were
Thankfully,
about to sign that lease. Wow. Wow.
correct, correct. So it was a
Okay.
real smack to the face. It was life kind of intervening.
Well, you would have been locked in on a 1-year lease that you couldn't pay for, right?
Correct, correct. It could have been worse. No doubt. I
Yeah.
didn't see that
Yeah.
initially, but as I was driving back, that did occur to me for sure.
Yeah. So then you move back to Connecticut. Is that does that's
No, the next day, the guy who hired me for the consulting firm called me. He had left about a month earlier, and he said, "Hey, I just started a for-profit business incubator." We didn't know back then you can't make any money doing that. And he said, "You want to come work for me?" And I asked for the parameters of the job, and he walked me through it, and I said, this would be great. Let me just go do hourly so that I can figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
But he got me right away drafting, pitch decks and business plans, and go to
So
market
this was
strategies.
like an incubator, like a startup, um, getting
Correct.
angel
Correct.
funds, VC funds. At what level?
That's right. So we would do everything from, we would take someone who had a really good idea, but nothing beyond that. And we would
Yeah.
draft the business plan, the pitch deck. I would do that work generally and help them
Yeah.
mobilize the capital. Right. So I built out the financial model, and we would go and knock on doors and we had some relationships. By we, I
So
meant,
you're raising
Marty.
seed capital for some of these folks.
Seed capital. Sometimes they're a little further along and they're kind of, they already had a beta ready to go. They're looking to really launch the market. So we talked to the VCs around, and, really what that did for me was it just unlocked something.
Yeah.
There was an excitement to that part of the landscape. I'd only been exposed to it a little bit in B school, and, it
Yeah.
really did unlock something in me. I just spent incredible hours just, drafting business plans and diving into pitch decks and trying to figure out who the best people to pitch were and refining the pitch. It just opened up something inside, and it unlocked something.
Yeah. Yeah. So entrepreneurial, aspect of it really came out, for you. So all of those and working with entrepreneurs, right?
Exactly. The passion, right? Folks like that are just inspired. They're different folks than the rest of us. And
Right.
they really do. It just resonated with me. And, very
Any kid
quickly, I
sisters?
realized,
Yeah.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry about that.
I was very, very quickly as a 27-year-old, I realized, there wasn't a lot of end game there for me in terms of making like money today. Like I could take
Yeah.
equity, I could get equity slivers in a bunch of companies, but I had student loans, I had to
Yeah.
actually, make a living
You
here. So
needed some cash flow. You needed some cash flow, right?
I did. So I parlayed that into a venture role in Albany, where my wife's from. We're moving there
Okay.
anyway. And I got into venture that way. So I had a lot of the experience talking to all the VCs, building out the decks and the models. And
Yeah.
that was a natural sort of evolution into becoming a
Right.
VC. And I did that for roughly 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. So you're at this incubator. Any companies that come to mind that you kind of seeded in their early beginnings that, and
So a
interesting?
couple that were the predecessor to companies that became kind of
Right.
real companies. But,
Yeah.
a lot of the guys that we were working with ultimately did very, very well the next go round, which is a great lesson for folks. I mean, you know, when I was a VC, if someone came to me and they had a huge win the first time around, I was kind of reticent to fund them. It was almost like a
Yep.
strike against them because, if you've got this great idea you've been thinking about your whole life and you've got an addressable market and you get the right funding partner, you can just win. I mean, it can go really, really well, and there's not a whole lot to mine from that. There's not a lot of lessons there. But the person who got their teeth kicked in had a good
Yeah.
idea, but maybe picked the wrong partner. Just the go to market was off in some way. The lessons that you learn there are
Yeah.
just so impactful, and those people are ones that you want to back. So, the
Yep.
lessons from failure are meaningfully, more,
Yeah.
concrete. And
Especially when you fail at a younger age. So you would back people who failed two or three times before they came up with the fourth idea. I'm like, I know how to do it this time around, right?
well, so I would say this. I think we have especially in this country, a sort of a tendency to mark failure with a scarlet letter. And
Yeah.
for me, I applaud the ambition to give it a go the second time around. It takes real moxie, right? You fail the first time, sometimes epically. You lost people, massive dollars, and to
Right.
have the moxie to go and do it again because you think you figured it out. Now, of course,
Yeah.
that person has to have the right idea, the right people, of course. But, for me, that's almost a check in the positive versus I think a lot of folks, and I don't know that I'm right, frankly,
Yeah.
but the way I view it is I view that as another sort of a check in the right direction versus the
Right. Hey, deal makers and industry leaders, are you ready to make deal connections, meet like-minded deal makers, and celebrate with the best in the mergers and acquisitions industry? I'm Roger Aguinaldo, creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor, and I invite you to mark your calendars for the 2024 Leadership in Deal Making Summit. This event will feature the prestigious awards gala for the 15th Annual Emerging Leaders Awards and the 15th Annual International M&A Awards on September 23rd and 24th, 2024 at the iconic New York Athletic Club in the heart of New York City. This is your chance to meet with the trailblazers who are shaping the future of global mergers and acquisitions. And this event is a gift that keeps on giving. We are thrilled to honor Paul Aversano, the managing director at Alvarez & Marsal, with the 2024 Leadership Award. Paul's dedication and expertise have set a new standard in our industry, and we can't wait to celebrate his achievements. And the excitement doesn't stop there. Former U.S. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross will be a co-chair of the event and an esteemed featured guest speaker. Be here when we dive deep into the latest trends, strategies, and innovations with Wilbur Ross and the top experts from around the globe. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your journey in mergers and acquisitions, this summit will change your life and the trajectory of your career. So don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to elevate your game and expand your network. Visit www.maadvisor.com. It's MAADVISOR.com today to register and secure your spot at the 2024 Leadership in Dealmaking Summit. See you in New York on September 23rd and 24th. The Leadership of Dealmaking awaits. I think you're right. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you see this in deal making too, right? Your first deals aren't always going to be the best ones, right? But you learn mostly from your failures than you do from your successes, frankly, right? So what not to do or how to do it better. And I think you're right. Those that get back up and do it again or try to do it again, you know, and have the right moxie are the ones you want to, you know, fund and back, because they're going to just figure it out. They're just going to keep going because that's what it is, right? You're not always going to have the right answer. You might have to tweak it a little bit. And those who have the perseverance and the persistence to tweak it are the ones that are at the end going to succeed, right? I think that's what you're saying.
It is. Every punch to the gut, every punch to the face is laced with a lesson. You just have to have, you know, sort of the guts to deconstruct it and analyze it and incorporate it with a feedback loop. I mean, that's how I view the world. I think, you know, the reason why the U.S. is what it is we have risk takers here, and a lot of them are risk takers, despite getting, you know, they're not getting a lot of accolades for, you know, having the guts to give it a shot. And I applaud that, because, you know, that's why we're so innovative.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's entrepreneurism, right? So entrepreneur, a lot of people think of an entrepreneur in business, but the definition of entrepreneur is really a very, very resourceful person, right? Someone who's extremely resourceful and and persistent, right? Just keeps going, just try to figure it out and try to get to the end game. And sometimes you're not going to get there, but at least you keep trying. So that's a huge lesson, I think, especially since a lot of our listeners are in M&A and emerging leaders, those in their sort of, you know, mid-careers, maybe have 10, 15 years of experience. Would that be sort of a lesson? How do you apply this to your life and perhaps what you can suggest to some people? And because it doesn't seem like you immediately went into M&A, you were VC first.
I was. And by being a VC, and I enjoyed the work, but there were aspects of it I liked a lot more than with others. And I realized, you know, from doing the work, that the deal making part was probably my favorite component. And you par that with someone like myself who will negotiate with toll booth operators. You know, my wife will tell you those stories, and someone who was, you know, selling now-a-laters on the bus in fourth grade. You know, I go along with buddies to go negotiate a car deal.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. It's a common thing. So what did you sell when you were in front of you? Were obviously an entrepreneur. I'm finding a lot of the deal makers have been very entrepreneurial when they were younger. Yeah. So what did you do when you were in fourth grade? What was some of the things that you did?
So there were these things called now or laters. There, you know, now we used to call them now laters. They're individually wrapped candies.
Right.
And
Yeah.
some of the kids at the bus would buy them in bulk, right? They'd be a store right by their bus stop. They'd buy a pack of it for X, and I would buy, the packs, and I would sell them individually. So I kind of
Okay.
bought wholesale and then would sell retail. I
Oh,
didn't
wait, you were
realize it
up
at
with
the
you were
time.
all part of that supply chain. So the first part was the kids who bought the big packs. You'd buy the big
Right.
pack from them, right? Are they
That's right.
marking up the big packs, or are they doing your favor?
They
Are they
did.
marking?
No, they did.
Okay.
Now, they marked up the big packs as they should, but not enough.
Right.
And, I sort of realized that the real value there was selling them individually. So I would buy in bulk. I'd buy everything they could. I had a single source supplier. That's a challenge, right? And
Yeah.
you're kind of married to a single source. And I
Right.
didn't mitigate that challenge, but I was 9.
Yeah.
But I've always been someone who wanted to negotiate, wanted to do it, put a deal together. And that's kind of how I ended up parlaying all those experiences into a role in M&A. Enough folks had
Yeah.
said, "You should be an investment banker." Like I know you're a VC and you like that, but the part you like the most and do the best is that deal piece, and you would be really good
Right.
at it. And I was like, okay, maybe, I don't know. It turns out they were right. That's where I should have ended up
Yeah.
all along, and so I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's go back to, so you're at a VC firm in Albany. Is that what
Correct.
you're in Albany for? And what firm was that?
I was with Counterpoint Ventures for most of
Okay.
it. So
Okay.
that was a firm that wasn't really well known, under the radar, run by a guy named Walt Robb, who was
Yeah.
one of Jack Welch's right-hand men when Welch was the CEO of GE. Walt
Yeah.
ran global research. It's a multi-billion dollar research effort. So he was a real technology guy. And when he retired from GE, he decided he wanted to become a VC, and he had a single LP. You can probably guess who it is. I won't say it out loud
Okay.
because I was never allowed to. It's pretty clear who that might have been. And, Walt was such an incredible technologist. We lost him a couple years ago to COVID, but he was such an incredible technologist that he could see all the incredible applications for a technology. And the one thing he could have used as help that I provided, shockingly, I was able to provide help for this guy who was massively more successful and smarter than I was. But what I would
Yeah.
always challenge him on was, can we just pick a path, right? I know we can solve this problem, this problem, problem, this problem. Can we hit one market, attack it, build a beachhead, build some credibility, and then once we've got some, try to establish some market dominance, and
Right.
then let's hit other verticals with this
Right.
incredible technology. But being that variety is a weakness, not a strength.
Yeah.
We want to attack something and gain market share, show that people will pay for it, and then branch out. And that's the
Yeah.
balance that I kind of provided. I carved out a niche.
You were giving the proof of concept first. You wanted to make sure you could proof of concept in a particular market, choose and prioritize that market first, establish the beachhead, and then go to other markets. Instead of just, it can do all these verticals, but you'll be spread very thin, and you may not have enough resources to even penetrate one of them if you're trying to attack all of
And which one will pay you for the solution? I mean,
them. Right.
solving a problem, that's only one. It's got to be a big enough problem that people are willing to pay for a solution. So I was kind of the market guy. That was my
Yeah.
job. My job was to be the market guy, and his job was to interpret the technology to make sure that they were, refined and all those things, and novel and all the
Why?
things you look for in VC.
I would think when you're working on the seed level, right? When you have very little resources, right? And zero money,
Yep.
right? Almost, right? You have to prove the concept first, essentially, and then raise the money, right? And then raise the big money, right? Sometimes, at least that happens on the seed level, right?
Right. That's true. But even later on, you find folks who, again, have a million, because the folks who create these technologies, that's how they're wired. They're wired to solve problems with technology. And if they create a technology that can address all these different challenges, you have to focus them on the challenge, maybe not the biggest challenge, the one people will pay, the largest addressable market, and the one where people will pay money,
Right.
pay enough money to
Right.
call a business around it.
Right.
And that's the
Because,
part
yeah.
that I focused on. That was my
Okay.
niche.
Okay. Okay. Terrific. So any companies that we know of, or any successes that we may or may not know of from there?
And we sold X-ray optical systems, and there were a bunch of little companies that we sold that
Yeah.
were great successes for us, but would never have hit. If you put $1.5 million into something you sell for 50 million bucks, that's a home run sort of investment. But
Yep.
it's not a unicorn, right? Because we're
Right.
early stage VC. we were trying to keep stuff from dying on the vine. There was really a benevolent component to it as
Yep.
well for Walt, which is awesome. He was a real supporter of that region of the country and,
Yep.
celebrated for it. And I was trying to fund good deals for sure. That
Yeah.
was my mandate.
Yeah.
He was
Were
the
you
one that
raising
was being.
capital too? Were you raising some VC funds alongside?
We would do sidecar. We sort of put together syndicates and like you
Yeah.
normally would. So we co-invested with a bunch of other folks along the way for sure. But Walt had a lot of sway. There were
Yeah.
people who would definitely want to invest side by side. So a lot of our deals were, sort of co-invest syndicates for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you would then either sell it or raise the series A or series B, or where did you guys exit?
Yeah. So sometimes we sold it even, we sold a couple of them before they even got any sort of revenue traction, right? So
Yeah.
when was the best time for us to exit? We would contemplate it. So we would certainly participate in later rounds of capital if we could,
Yeah.
knowing that we're going to get crammed down, and we always did.
Right.
We wouldn't be lead anymore. We were lead
Right.
investor in most of our deals initially, but the subsequent rounds we were not.
Yeah.
We were kind of the barnacle funds that are tagging along for the ride, and we
Yeah.
understood what our role was. So it really depended. It was deal by deal. Sometimes we'd get out early, sometimes we'd ride it, sometimes we'd ride it too late. You
Yeah.
never know, but those are the lessons that you learn as a VC. It's a weird business where you invest in 15 deals, and in early stage especially,
Yeah.
a lot of those things will go to zero. I
Yeah.
mean, a
Tough.
shocking number of those will go to zero. Yeah.
Yeah. Tough, right? It's very, very different, especially in seed, seed or angel. You were basically angels at the point.
Late stage angel, early stage VC. I mean,
Okay.
we were doing series A's, but they'd be small series A's,
Yeah.
right? So
Okay. All
kind
right.
of a hybrid. Yeah.
Probably like a few $100,000 into each company.
Well, no, more than that. I mean, there are probably a couple we did like that, but we'd put $1 million to work.
Okay.
The fund was around 50. So we had money to put, but we'd also retain a significant piece for follow-on
Yeah.
investment. When you're early,
You
you can't deploy, 40 of 50
right.
initially. You've got to gain
Right.
more than half in a lot of cases to follow on.
And how many investments were there? Like 20, 30 investments that, I mean, you have to do at
High
least that,
teens? Yeah, high teens to 20 in that range.
right? And it was a fund, or was it a special purpose vehicle of some sort,
No,
or
it was a fund. It was a
it was a
venture fund.
fund? Okay. Okay. And you didn't raise another one, or you just
We
had that
we
one?
just knock on one door, and the second fund two was the same LP.
Oh, okay. Got it.
We've
Okay.
done enough for this place that that
All right.
fundraising was quite easy.
Yeah. Well, I
That
would
wasn't the
think
hard part.
if you wanted to, you could raise money alongside, you be the GP and then raise additional LP funds if you wanted to, but it
Always
doesn't
could.
sound
We
like.
could always sidecar it. Yeah, we would have
Yep.
sidecars occasionally, and we had folks that would co-invest with us without a problem. So that we never had a deal that we didn't do because we couldn't find the capital for it.
Yep. Yep. And Albany, I don't see. I mean, you have the schools up there. You got the University of Albany. You have Rensselaer, right? You have
Right.
RPI up there. You have a few
But
university or research things up there. Um, Not really known, maybe because I'm not in the circle up there, but not really the center of venture capital.
it's not. No, it's completely undercapitalized. It's worse now than it was then. I mean, back then, Advantage Capital was that's Scott Murphy, who spent a little time in Congress, if you recall.
Yep.
He was at Advantage before he went to Congress, and they were up in Glens Falls. They moved down to the city. We back then we had High Peaks Venture Partners. Now it's called Primary
Okay.
Venture Partners. They moved out of New York City they were in Troy, New
Okay.
York. FA
Okay.
Tech Ventures, which is the first they've ceased to exist. So you're right. There's not a whole lot there, but Albany has, Albany Nano is a monster endeavor.
Right. Right.
Right. So Global Foundries for AMD's foundry is in outside of Albany, New York. That happened almost 20 years ago. So there is a kind of a little tech hub happening, but we were
Yeah.
investing across the state for the most part, mostly in state, but really across the state. And the state does have, pockets of, like a nucleus of activity in
Yeah.
different sectors.
I was up there. My son went to SUNY Albany, State
Sure.
University of New York, and there's that Nano Research Institute, right? Is that what you're talking about? So
That's right.
that's the state of New York, and with a number of other companies, billions of dollars, right? Of or
Right.
hundreds of millions, of, right? Billions of
No,
dollars.
you're right. It's billions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Became a real hub of technology. There was a gentleman there who's, I think was removed ceremoniously, or unceremoniously for reasons that I won't get into. Elaine
right,
Calleros. He was a real guru, and it really attracted a lot of attention to Albany on the
yeah,
nano side. And for a long time, it was the nano capital of the world.
right, right, right. So I would think that there would be a lot of other smaller, sort of startup VC type businesses sort of in and around there, right? But it never,
Well,
never
so
really.
it's actually gone the opposite way, but you can
Yeah,
so there are a lot of folks who are New York City guys who I've, known for years that will just do the 90 corridor up, and, they'll go up 87,
yeah,
and then the 90 corridor, and they can cover it from the city. They take a
yeah.
day maybe a day a month, and they can cover that territory pretty ably without having to be resident in those geographies.
Yeah, and it's easy. It's easy. You're right. It's easy to get up there. Okay, so 10 years, uh, venture capital in Albany. Then what happened? What happened then, Dara?
Sure. Yeah, so I took a couple of roles, and it happens in VC where you end up taking a C-suite role. So I ended up being the CEO of one of the companies we'd invested in for a while, just to kind of keep it going, not because it was something I really wanted to do, but it just kind of needed that
Right.
leadership. And a couple other versions of that, so operational roles. And before I
Yeah.
got to Benchmark, I was a COO of a different company, not one we had invested into, but just a different company that I
Yeah.
took that role
You
in,
became an
and
operator for a few years,
I did for a number of years, and it was really helpful for me. I mean, I had done it in fits and bursts, but not
right?
for a sustained period of time for a single company. So it was definitely helpful for me to roll my sleeves up and put together a 100-day plan, and process map existing processes, and put together a future state process,
Make
and then
sure
do the
make
gap
sure you made
analysis.
payroll, right? Make sure you made payroll.
Needing payroll, reach into your pocket when you need to once in a while, all those things. And, the really helpful, I think, for anybody who is doing deals, if you're in and around deal making, it's really helpful to have been a buyer and a seller,
Yeah,
for our
yeah,
role. And fortunately, I was kind of on, you know, being on some boards that were, contemplating a sale, or, buying companies. I think that's really, really helpful. It gives you a lot of perspective that you would lack if you hadn't seen both sides of the table. I think what it gives me that more than anything is empathy.
yeah.
When a buyer or a seller is giving you something that, it may be just like pain, you can know where they're coming from because you've in some ways been where they were. And that's really, I think, really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say your operator role, running a company that helped as well? Do you think um, you're a better deal maker because you ran companies?
Definitely, because I think we spot some of the weaknesses in company. Every company has a weakness. I tell that to my clients. There's this. Here are a couple holes that I'm seeing. Don't mask them. Let's work on them. But they're going to come out. We're not going to cover them up. But
Right,
those holes are opportunities for a buyer. The right buyer is going to see that as an opportunity to apply some
right.
rigor, some controls, some processes, and they can actually make that into a positive for themselves. So yeah, absolutely, it definitely helps having that background as in the C-suite of these small companies. We're not talking about large companies, but growth companies. It really does allow us to think a little bit more like a business operator, because a lot of the buyers that we talk to are also business operators. Whether they're
Yeah,
large companies or medium-sized companies. So if we can think like a business owner at times when we're trying to solve the business problems inside of a deal, I think it's absolutely helpful.
yeah. Before we get into benchmark, I want to back up just a little bit.
Right.
I would say you and I look a little different from most folks in the sort of in the investment banking M&A PE field.
Yeah.
What's your background? What's your ethnicity?
Yeah, I am a classic mutt. And by
Okay.
mutt, no two mutts are alike. But so my mother was Irish, English, a little Scottish, and Native American. Her
Okay.
mother was an orphan. Her mother was Charlotte Fuller. My grandmother, she traced her lineage back to the Dr. Samuel Fuller on the Mayflower. So I may be
Wow.
the darkest Mayflower baby in the country, but I am in fact documented as a Mayflower baby. And my
Wow.
father is Persian, right?
Okay.
So I'm Persian, Irish, English, Scottish, Native American, and maybe a little
Okay.
Welsh. So a lot of that part of the world there. But yeah, Persian is where the pigmentation comes from, and the rest is from my mother.
I don't know if did you have quite a few Persians and in the VC space up there?
Not up there. No,
Oh,
not up there. Not where I didn't run into a lot of them in my, hometown. I grew up in Connecticut.
right.
Not That
Yeah.
was the darkest thing in my town. So, back then, I know it's become a little more diverse over time, but 40 years ago, I was the
Right.
diversity in my hometown.
Yeah. Well, you did stand out. I mean, did that help or hurt you? Talk about that. I mean, we're kind of 20, 30, 40 years later, but did it help, hurt?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I grew up in a town called Darien, right? So Darien, Connecticut's pretty well known to folks out around the city. And again, back then I moved to that town about 40 years ago,
Yeah.
it was a completely homogenous town. I mean, it was completely white. I happened to be a good athlete back then and a big kid. And
Yeah.
I frankly, I don't know how my path would have been if I had been a smaller kid who wasn't very athletic. It just so happened I was the biggest kid in the class and could throw a baseball pretty
Okay.
hard, and I'm pretty good in that regard. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that was pretty foundational.
Yeah.
But it was really, really critical, it's because how
So
often
did
are
you
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 the
played baseball? You
baseball,
sold the
football?
now or laters to your whole
Yes,
teammates, and
I
you
did.
played baseball. Okay.
Baseball, football. Yeah, I was back then. I was a bit of a jock. It's become clear to me that I'm no longer one. I ran this morning. It did not go well. So
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
the
that's
athlete
why
I
now
once
now
was.
it explains why you became a sports writer, right? Because you loved sports,
Right.
right? You played sports.
I
Okay.
love sports. I was reasonably well known still at that point. I was like, I'll just try it. And they knew who I was still because only a
Yeah.
couple years removed from me playing. So that's how I got the job basically. That and I had a paper I did on Intel. I said, I want to be a sports writer. Here's my Intel paper from college. They said, oh, you write a little bit. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. So, definitely being a little different in a town that looks kind of the same,
Yeah.
really does, it has you focused internally. You've got to focus internally. You've got to find your own self worth and
Yeah.
not sort of measure yourself by
Yeah.
reactions from other people. And I think that was really, really helpful. I happen to have, a mother who thought I was incredible and told me every day. And that certainly helped, for sure. And I had great relationships there. It was a great place to grow up in a lot of ways, probably not in other ways, but great school, pretty insulated, but not very exposed to the outside world. So when I got
Yeah.
to college, it definitely was a little eye opening for me and really, really helpful for me, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. So, okay. So you're at the VC firm. You did a couple of operating roles. How'd you get to Benchmark?
Yeah, so we had been investing in real estate down here, actually in St. Pete for a number of years. We were vacationing down here, and we were down here one day and decided, it was January of 15, so it just became January of 15, and it was like -1 in Albany, and it was like 70
Yeah.
degrees and perfect in St. Pete. And we looked at each other on the couch and just said, "What are we doing? Let's not go back." Well, we had to go back. So we plotted a course to get down here within the next 2.5 months before our daughter's birthday. So
Yeah.
we started applying to jobs, and I took it as an opportunity
How
to
old were your daughter
finally.
at that time?
So Michaela was going to be 7. We wanted to get down there before her 7th birthday. So she was
Okay.
6, and Lily would have been 2
Right.
at that
Okay.
point.
So
So
before,
we
like,
were.
as getting into first or second grade, something like that, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So we decided, hey, let's just go up there, get the house ready to sell, look for jobs. And, it became clear talking with my wife that, this is probably the time for me to start, putting together those pieces that I had, like the negotiation piece, my passion for deal making, folks telling me that I would be good at this and me not necessarily believing it. So I just started
Yeah.
looking for jobs sort of in investment banking and in that world. And this, the benchmark thing came to me. I don't know if it's through a recruiter and I applied. I had a conversation. My interview was not with the person I expected it to be with. I was supposed to interview with Kendall, who's still with us. I ended up getting a guy named Steven, who I didn't know who it was. Stephen Keen
Yeah.
is our chairman, executive
Okay.
chairman.
Okay.
And
So it's
I,
pretty
it
high
might have,
up there.
Well, it might have gone differently if I had known who I was talking to. I was very cavalier and confident, maybe too confident, but he's a great guy and a great interviewer, and it went well. I came down, did a couple interviews, and then just to be sure, I actually said I want to come down one more time, and because I got the job, and I wanted to interview my team before I
Yeah,
took the job because I wanted to make sure that it was the right fit, and it just
yeah,
worked out really really well. And
yeah,
we came down, we came down, in force. About a week before my daughter's birthday, we were here.
yeah, yep, yep.
So we hit our
So
deadline.
okay, no, that's terrific, and I'm sure you would have taken a job at McDonald's to get away from 1 degree weather down to 70 plus degree weather.
Right.
There. Uh, but it sounds like you beat all the crowds from New York who escaped right around COVID to go down to Florida.
We did, and
Yeah,
we got lucky with the real estate piece as well
yeah,
because, those folks
yeah.
really drove up values here. I mean, my
Drove
house has
drove up the
tripled in
valleys.
value.
So thanks for that journey, and I know we took a long time to go there, but there are some lessons within there. Maybe we'll as we talk through that, and our audience kind of knows that there's no necessarily direct path, right? That you don't there's no
Right.
course. Maybe I got my MBA from NYU. I mean, maybe I took one mergers and acquisitions course. I mean, there was it was
Yep.
nothing in there that was the career path. So the point is, like, there's many different ways to get to where you're at. There's no right way or wrong
Right.
way to get to where you're at. So tell us, what is Benchmark? What is your focus at Benchmark? What do you do at Benchmark? How big is Benchmark? What people who are not familiar with Benchmark International and what they do and what you do.
Absolutely. So, Benchmark's been around. I say this, and it's a little confusing, but in various incarnations for over 30 years. Now, in its
Okay.
current form, it's about 15 years old. Stephen Keen, who is our founder, had a different business that he ran, looked a lot like this. He ran it up, sold it. It's still thriving today. And he started Benchmark a few years later. So we've been around for 15 years and 12 years in the US. So based in the UK initially, those offices still exist. We have offices in the UK, Ireland, Germany, Amsterdam now, a couple in South Africa, the main office here in Tampa. It's actually our global headquarters, an office in Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, Denver, Colorado, and Los Angeles. So we've really, over the course of 12 years here in the US, really expanded really rapidly. We're sell side and agnostic. And by agnostic, I mean truly agnostic. A lot of folks say, "Hey, I'm agnostic. I'll take any deal that's software or healthcare." It's like, okay, well, we'll take those too. Obviously, we love those kinds of deals, but we'll take on deals that others probably wouldn't consider. Now, there are some deals we probably, are probably aren't for us, but generally not because of the sector. It's really we're looking for committed clients. Folks who are really looking to exit their business, and not folks who are looking to stick their toe in the water. That's really one of the key considerations of all the things you're looking for. Everyone wants SaaS businesses and tech enabled and industrial services, all these hot areas. But the most important thing, in my view, is a committed client. Someone who's committed to the process is really, really important. So sell side, that's our focus. Lower middle market, we'll do deals from $5 million to hundreds of millions. We've done all of them. I've been involved in deals that entire range.
Five
So,
million
but
of value, revenue, EBITDA. What's 5 million?
yeah, 5 million in enterprise value and up is
Okay.
pretty much where we are. Again, but we've done deals that are hundreds of
So
millions, but most of our
you could
deals
be half a
5 to
million EBITDA. You could be half a million EBITDA at 10x. You're at 5 million.
that's right. Yeah, and we've got some of those. We do have some of those. They tend to be add-ons for funds, but those folks, especially if they're committed to the process and they've got some an interesting business that has a moat around it, and they've got a strategy, and there's opportunity to really sort of scale it, especially if it's like a fragmented
Yeah.
industry that's ripe for a roll up. Yeah, we're in. We'll absolutely take a swing at that. We've done a lot of deals on businesses that did not transact with someone else. So
Yep.
someone took them to market and it just didn't work out, and they come to us, and we'll obviously we've got to get through some of the barriers there, but once we take in the market, we find great success because that kind of a client is someone who clearly wants to sell, right? It didn't work
So
out,
you're
but they go ahead again.
lower middle market, and your firm is Benchmark International. So you're in Tampa. So how does the international come into play? Are you traveling all over, or how is your
Sure.
organization organized to to be international?
No, it's a great question. So, we've organized our teams not in terms of sector, but in terms of geography. So, my team covers the eastern seaboard of the United States, all the way up through Maine, from Florida through Maine. That's our seller, right? But the buyer can come from anywhere on the planet, and we leverage the global aspect of our business. We'll have, if we think there's an international play potentially from the buyer base, we'll certainly have conversations with our partners overseas. They're all part of Benchmark. I just was having a chat yesterday with one of our partners in the UK about networking capital. We had a really good, healthy discussion because we're seeing an evolution on how buyers are treating networking capital, especially sort of demanding more cash on the balance
Yeah.
sheet, which is something that's fairly new. So we had
Yeah.
a great conversation. So we share ideas, we share buyers. If there's US buyers that we're working with that are looking for overseas deals,
Yeah.
we're in communication with them. So we definitely leverage each other in that way for sure. But in
So
terms of
you have
how we're
actual
organized, it's geographic.
offices? You have actual
We do.
offices, or are they partners? Yeah, how is that? How is that organized?
It's a great question. Every office that we have is a manned office. So, I'm wearing a suit today. This is not new. This is not for the
Okay.
camera. We wear
Oh,
suits, Monday through Friday. There are probably 15 casual days a year in this
I
business. So we're
heard
always doing.
after COVID, they got rid of the tie, but I guess Benchmark didn't get the memo.
No, we didn't get the memo. We're leaning in. We're going the opposite direction. We're going the other way. But our offices are manned. We're better together. We realized that we were only out of the office for a little while for COVID, and we were less productive.
Yeah.
We had the technology to be productive enough, but we're better together. We have big
Yeah.
deal teams. My deal teams are 12 to 14 people here, each of my teams, and
Wow.
they're together. Like they're not in separate office. I have an office, which I hate being in an office, but I'm the only one in an office. The rest of them are on the deal floor. They're
Yep.
interacting constantly. They're course correcting in real time. The transaction director is hearing the conversations and saying and providing guidance and feedback in real time. And that's how we're operated. We operate together. So every office is a manned office.
Yeah. And are you still doing deals, or are you managing? Are you doing deals, or what are you doing? What's your focus?
My focus is to be a lever for the team. I take credit for their great work. That's really my highest and best use. I
Yeah.
always say I have my level of incompetence, but my job is to make sure that the team is pointed in the right direction, to manage the P&L, obviously, to manage make sure we have the right resources in place, to incentivize and boost the team. My directors, they come into me, the transaction directors, and we'll talk about deals regularly. So the way I impact a deal now is they'll come with a challenge. And what I found, and I think this is a function of my old VC days, I rarely have the answer, the actionable answer. I'll have 50 questions and a couple of ideas, and it tends to sort of extract out of them the path forward. Rarely is my idea accepted, but they'll be like, wait,
Okay.
I could tweak that to do this. And so that's how I impact deals now. And also, frankly, sometimes I brought in as a bit of a blunt instrument. When buyers are getting a little squirrely and they have asks that are not market, when the lawyers need a little course correction, they bring me in for those kinds of conversations. I don't tend to have the fun conversations anymore.
Yeah.
I miss those.
You're the
Uh,
bad guy. You're the bad
that's
guy.
right. Yeah, everyone has to have a heavy, and that tends to be me in these movies, unfortunately. But you have to lean in wherever I can add value. That's my view. I view my time as being less valuable than my transaction director's time. So if there's something that the team needs to deliver, whether it's drafting an article, if, we do a lot of content. If we need it, I'd rather just take my time and draft the article than have those guys do it because they're driving revenue. I'm not quite the revenue driver like I used to be. I don't view myself as a cost center quite yet, but those guys are the ones that are day to day driving revenue. So I do try to get out of their way when I can, as much as possible, and be a lever, whenever I
Yeah.
can.
You're so how many offices do you have, worldwide?
14.
14. Okay. And there how many in US? How many Canada? How many what are the other locations?
We have roughly 100 in the US, and I would say I'm gonna say about 150 in Europe, and the rest are in South Africa.
Okay, that's how many people you have. Okay, how
Yes,
many
that's correct.
office how about office the number of
Oh,
office
I see. I see.
locations?
So our offices in the US, I guess we have, 4,
Okay.
and we have 2 in South Africa, so we have 8 in Europe.
Okay. Okay. Any in Asia? None in Asia?
Not yet. We've had some conversations. It's a different market. I mean, it's
Yeah.
definitely a different market, and one that we're certainly interested in. But at this point, we don't have a manned office in Asia.
And the European and South African offices, they also have sell side deals in their marketplace, right?
They do.
And you're selling
They do.
perhaps to maybe add-ons to US companies and vice versa, right?
We do absolutely. I've done a lot of deals, and I think I've done I just looked at it, 202 deals since I've been here in about 9.5 years,
Wow.
and I would say
Wow.
10% of them have been to an international buyer, which is a pretty high number actually when you think about it. Because you know the market, especially private equity, is so concentrated in the United States. It's pretty laughable. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of private equity in Asia. There's not a ton in Europe. It's predominantly in the United States. So, and we do, a good percentage of our deals are to private equity funds through a platform or add-on, a strategic that's owned by a private equity fund. So,
Yeah.
most of our buyers are domestic for sure, and the same over there, right? So, in Africa, a lot of those deals are other African-based companies, but you'll see some, European-based or US-based buyers as well. We've actually sent some buyers that way for sure. That whenever I hear, hey, we're actually looking at South Africa, or we're looking at Kenya, or any of the countries in and around to kind of service that entire continent through that
Yeah.
office, we send it their way.
So, primarily, are most of your buyers the PE funds, or strategic, or how are you seeing that?
Yeah, it's a good mix. So, the one thing we do a little differently than most is when we have a deal ready to go to market, we'll put together we have 5 people who will get in a room. One of them is our buyer list person. I hired someone who all he does all day is construct buyer lists. So we're
Okay.
putting together a bespoke list for each one of our seller clients, right? So there's not a lot of overlap with one company from the other. We might start with 100 names and then go out in concentric circles, and it might end up being over 1,000, and we'll contact all of them. So,
Yeah.
at any given time, I would say, 40 to 50% is strategic and the balance is private equity. That's probably all right. And you have family offices and independent sponsors in there. Don't do a ton of independent sponsor deals, but once in a while it makes sense.
Yep. Yep. And the resulting buyer is mostly PE or mostly strategic over the last couple of years? How is that breakdown?
It's probably other folks have the stats, but it's probably 60/40 financial buyer versus,
Yep.
strategic buyer. I say financial because I want to lump in, family offices and the
Yep.
like.
Yep. So
So a
I'll
little more.
let you. Yeah. So I'll ask you a couple of questions, but primarily on your somewhat secret sauce. But what makes Benchmark, successful, because you
Yeah.
do hundreds of deals a year, right? Or scores of deals a year. I mean, how many deals
No,
did you do
100.
last
Right.
year?
About 200.
200 deals last year. So why are you successful? Why do you think are you successful at it? And why should, a seller hire Benchmark to sell their company?
Love that question, by the way.
Yeah.
My marketing team is going to really love that question. And I'm sure they will clip this answer. I hope it's a good one. The reality is that we only work for sellers. I think that's a real strength of ours for sure. Right. So we don't have any mixed messages. That's certainly part of it. We also sign an agreement with our clients, and that agreement lays out a series of services. And we're really serious about delivering on those services. Right. So, we don't guarantee we're going to sell their business, but we're going to perform these services that really do lead to positive outcomes. Uh,
Yeah.
and we're rigorous about it. We're rigorous about delivering service to our clients and communicating our efforts to our clients. Sometimes there's a lag. You go to market, you've got a lot of activity, but they don't see it yet.
Yeah.
So you've got to communicate your activity to your client to ensure that they get it. I think that's
Sometimes
part of it.
you gotta get them ready, right? You gotta,
Definitely. That's right.
in right
And
now
if
for your,
if it takes 3 weeks to get an NDA in, you might get 12 NDAs in, and it's from the work you did 3 weeks earlier, right? It doesn't necessarily happen instantly, and so as
right.
long as you're communicating your efforts to your client, that's an important component of it. We also have an origination team here. So my guys, all they do, when I say guys, I mean interchangeably, they're guys and gals on the team, we do is execute. So we're a transaction team. We don't have any origination responsibilities. That's pretty unique. So we're
Mhm.
really kind of stick to the knitting, as an old saying I learned in college 30 plus years ago.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
do we do this thing that we do it really, really well, and our origination team does what they do. So, when I first got here, it was a paper file. So I was a director when I got here. And Steven, our chairman, would hand me a file and say, here's your new client. Go call them, get them going in our system, start building out the sim. And that was my introduction to the client. They had paid us a fee. They didn't sign our contract exclusively, and they're our new client. And that's I think a real advantage for us, that we don't have to spend our time sort of, hunting and then delivering, right? We're just really delivering. Now that engine is really, really expensive. It takes a long time to get going. So you have to have
Yeah.
a real commitment on the front end to get that
Yeah.
origination engine going. And that's a real advantage. Our guys only do one thing. They they they
And they execute the deal. They don't have to do, they don't necessarily have to be the rainmaker in
correct.
finding, the companies. So your origination team, who runs that then? Is there a separate, what is it? Is that a telemarketing operation, lead generation? Oh, how is that? Are they offering valuation? Yeah. Talk about that.
So we do a lot of the things you've talked about. We do have a lot of folks who are on the phone, but at this point, where they're really largely responding to folks who've come in through our drip campaigns. We're very active in marketing this business. We create a lot of content. I'm sure they will clip this and use this in their content delivery, because we get a lot of folks responding to, articles that we've drafted, or webinars that we've done, and so a lot of folks respond that way. So the calls that our folks make are, very warm calls to folks who are really interested in learning more about the services we provide. So yeah, that's kind of the route. There's, sales sequencing and all those kinds, and it changes right over time. I didn't know
Yeah.
what sales sequencing was when I got here. It probably didn't
Right.
exist back then. So we're
Right.
sort of evolving as we go. But their job is really to, on the front end, find folks who are interested in hearing more about it. And we have salesmen, like road directors or director level folks. So kind of high end sales folks who are talking to business owners. A lot of them have been business owners in the past,
Yeah.
and they're the ones that are sitting down in person with potential clients, and walking them through our services and seeing if there's a fit in both directions. Not every that we, we've turned down, a couple thousand prospective sellers every single year that just don't fit. They're just probably not a good fit. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe they're not committed. So they're assessing us, and we're assessing them, and we do it in person typically with one of our more senior folks on the origination side. So it's a pretty elaborate, connection of folks who are making this happen on that side. And we think
Yep.
also on our side, it's also a pretty elaborate,
Yep.
elegant series of folks,
So
delivering.
who runs that origination side, and where is that located? Is that also down in Tampa?
It is, yeah. So for the US, it's based here in Tampa, and it's Greg Jackson, who was our CEO. He
Yeah.
really focuses on that side of the business,
Right.
and yeah, so they're here.
Yeah. And so
In the
they meet
UK,
with
we have, yeah. Sorry, go
they
ahead.
meet with the client. They meet with the clients. They say, hey, we'll do evaluation of your company. You should sell your company. This is what you think you will get for this. And then we'll hand them off to our execution team.
The focus for them really is on, here are the services that we're going to deliver, and here's why it's going to create a better outcome for you. So, we do try not to, pretend that we know what a company is, worth at this point in the process. I've always believed, and Benchmark believes, that we can go through complicated valuation exercises, DCF or economic value added or dividend discount model. We know how to do all that stuff. A lot of folks do. You hit a couple buttons on Excel now, it just kind of spits it out for you. So
Yeah.
it's not that hard. I also know that you can, as a VC, I know you can lever up and down very easily with growth rates and a cost of capital, what that result looks like. So the best way to value any collection of assets is to bring it to market and see what the
Yeah.
market will bear. So that's our focus in terms of valuation for
Yeah.
sure. So
But
they're really,
I mean,
go ahead.
to be devil's advocate a little bit, not necessarily
Go ahead.
challenging, but there are other investment banks will
Or
say, we think you can get this much, just like a real estate, right? You go to a broker, say, hey, I just sold this property for this amount. I can get you higher than benchmark. So how do you
got it. Yep.
differentiate yourself with someone who's providing, hey, I can get you 10 times, 12 times, 15 times your
No, it's a
EBITDA?
great question. And I appreciate the analogy because, real estate is kind of a fungible pool
Right.
of assets, right? I mean, you've got a 2,500 square foot house in a gated community and there's 15 others right next to you. So you have a really good tight, you do a quick comparative market analysis, you know what it's worth. You've got a really good proxy for the value. These businesses are all unique. They're collections of people and assets, and they have different client bases and they have different values because of these attributes. And frankly, each buyer is going to apply a different value to it because of what they can do with it. So while I do understand that we can go through these exercises and a lot of folks do, and we know how to do it. I think it just the best you can do is give them a range. So when it comes down to it, we'll give them a range, but it's a broad range, right? And
Right.
and you're speaking to different structures. Someone who's buying just a pool of cash flow might
Yeah.
pay 4 times for a business that is strategic, who can do a lot with it, who can
Right.
unlock dormant value in you or vice versa, will pay 8 or 10 or 12 times for. And both of those
Yeah.
buyers are right? Because the first buyer is only buying a cash flow profile, and the second buyer is buying an opportunity. And so that's kind of how we present it. So if we're presenting values, it's always a range because you're likely to see a big, if you do a good job of canvassing the market, soliciting bids, you're going to get a really broad range, and we'll get 6 or 8 offers on some of our deals because we're talking to 1,000 buyers. We're not
Yeah.
talking to 35 or 40.
Right. 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 So it sounds like you'll give the range. I hope. Yeah. It sounds like it could be a big range. Uh, Protect yourself
Yeah.
on both sides. Um, but it sounds like one of your unique advantages is that you're going out to everybody, basically,
We
right?
will. It's not a shotgun, right? So it's not a scatter gun. It's not a blunderbuss, but we are taking a pretty wide swath of the market, and that's why I have someone whose job it is to construct these lists, and it's a living, breathing thing. It isn't like a static list that we build out a list and that's it. I view it as really like an intelligent system with a feedback loop. We're getting smarter as we talk to buyers, right? Buyers give us feedback. Classic example. I actually had this one probably 8 years ago where our first list was for a pump company. And one of the early buyers who was really bright said, listen, I get why you called me, but you're completely off. You're close, but you're actually completely off. I buy pumps above the ground. Your pump is below the ground. So you want to
Yeah.
talk to these guys. And that's the feedback loop. So we start looking at similar companies to the one he mentioned,
Yeah.
and we're off to the races. So we get smarter talking to buyers. We get smarter listening in conversations and having these conversations. We really relay feedback to our clients. They give us feedback. We just get smarter. So we're sort of course correcting along the way and adding to that list as we get more
Yeah.
intel from the market.
Yeah. Speaking about the market, and then we'll talk about, working for Benchmark and your team.
Yep.
But where do you think, the lower mid market, private equity, M&A overall, I think has been down. Maybe not at Benchmark. You've been growing, I guess.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
through this sort of quote unquote downturn. But it sounds like you're still growing because you're just always out there. Where do you see the future, at least the future being defined as, sort of through the end of the year, through the election into 2025?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I had it yesterday in a meeting that I had. So it's a good question. My view is that a lot of these sort of macro trends that are out in the market that clearly are impacting M&A broadly, right? Things like interest rate fluctuation or increases, inflation, wars on multiple continents. We have an election that could swing it, vastly.
Yeah.
Things like regulation and everything in between. So there's a lot of sort of stochastic variation in the market that's out
Yeah.
there, and I think it's hitting. I think it hits up market way more than it hits down market, right? So
Mhm.
regulatory issues, they don't tend to really hit the sub $50 million deal like they do $1 billion deal. And
Yeah.
frankly, in a time when deal making can get really, really risky for a business, right? When you're looking at, if you're a $2 billion business, say, and you're looking to buy a $500 million company, you, in a tough environment, you're betting your business on that acquisition, right?
Yeah.
And if you're wrong in terms of the picking the company, or you're off on the integration, it could be catastrophic. Not just for buying the half a billion dollar company, but also for the $2 billion parent company, right? So in those markets, it's also more risky at that point to greenfield a new idea, a new geography. You're likely better off to buy a $20 million company, and a
Yeah.
lot of these places are very parochial, provincial. They want to buy from someone they know, someone who's local. So,
Yeah.
it's just a much smaller risk to buy something for, $50 million or $10 million than it is to either greenfield or buy something bigger. So that's why I don't know that it's necessarily a benchmark thing. I think we're insulated quite a bit from what happens up market and all of these larger
Yeah.
macro trends. And I think, frankly, it drives more buyers, down market a bit. So we've had great traction. We're growing massively every year, all the way through COVID. We're growing this year. We
Yeah.
had a great start to this year. We're going to finish strong as well. And there's also some macro sort of demographic trends that I think really work in our favor. The baby boomers are kind of dead center of that generation right now. Those
Yeah.
people are around 60, the middle of that group, and they own
Yeah.
40% of small businesses in the United States. And that's something that's
Wow.
immutable. There's no changing
So
that. So those
they're all
folks are,
retiring, right?
they are, and that's going to happen for another 15 years or so. So there's a lot of green grass ahead, and those demographics are just real. They're not,
And by the
there
way,
could be a
Dara,
lot of,
they're not waiting till they're 75, 80 to sell these companies, right? Because, you can't do much, traveling when you're 80.
that's right. That's right. You've kind of run out of time. Exactly. No, is no
Yeah.
doubt. So we've got a real, the youngest of those folks are, 59 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
this 10 years from now is when they'll really be focused on selling. So it's a
Yeah.
big swath of that group that still has to sell. And, I think there's a lot of green grass ahead. I think it's a great place to be. I think down market, especially, because I do think there's a lot of insulation down here.
Yeah. Lower mid market, middle market, sub 50 million, 100 million, maybe even sub 500, right?
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think especially kind of sub 100, because the
Yeah.
gamble is so much smaller. If you get it
Yeah.
wrong, it's not catastrophic.
Right. Right. So you're going to see, and you're right. I think the demographics are right of baby boomers that are retiring, of those folks. Tell us about working for Benchmark, your culture, number of, maybe emerging leaders, perhaps looking to make a change to work for someone like Benchmark. What types of people do you hire? Are you hiring straight out of college? You want them to have a few years doing this or doing
Yeah.
something? What types of people are you looking for, and how do they get to work at Benchmark?
No, it's a great question. We don't look for the typical, I think, profile that you would see in a typical investment bank. So, for me, for my deal makers, I like a finance degree, sure, but I'm not looking for someone with 15 internships. I'm not looking for a Harvard or Wharton MBA. Frankly, those haven't worked out for me in my history. Not to speak pejoratively of those folks who are great guys.
Do you hire from the Ivies? Or do you actually see that as a negative? Because, frankly, a lot of people are saying guys and gals are really, really smart, but they don't work as hard.
So I don't know if I should comment on that, but I think I tell you the schools I tend to had a lot of success with, and
Yeah.
it's the larger Florida schools. So when I'm hiring in Florida, I'm hiring from the University of Florida, which is essentially the equivalent of getting an Ivy. You want to get into Florida,
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah.
Florida State, USF, UCF, and I look for folks who have the ability to convince and compel. That's my biggest, for me, the biggest attribute. if you could convince someone to do something they didn't know they wanted to do, or perhaps didn't want to do, like sign an NDA, that's a
Right.
skill that's really marketable. I can teach you the finance and the M&A piece. Really, I really can. Over the course of, your first year here, you're going to learn so much about how businesses are operated, about finance, about operations, about all of it. But the one thing I can't teach someone is how to convince and compel, how to use your gravitas to drive a deal forward. So that's actually the trait that I look for more than anything.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, it's really like a hunger, like someone who really wants to have exposure in this industry. You know, we're giving people reps across so many industry verticals that they just get exposed. It's like drinking from a fire hose initially, but if your brain is engaged the entire time, you're going to learn at a rate that you can't learn anywhere else. I had a guy, he was 22 when he got here. He spent a year working for me, just a little over a year. And he came into my office and gave me his 2 weeks and said, listen, this has been the best experience of my life. I'm going to go start a business because what I learned here, I'm going to take that. He's a UVA kid, bright kid, and I'm going to apply that to this business. And he's absolutely killing it right now. And I couldn't be
Yep.
happier for him because
Wow.
he had his brain on the whole time. And it's great. It's great
Did
proving
you try?
grounds.
Did you try to change his mind or what?
I did. I don't, because when people come with conviction like that,
Yeah.
one thing I would tell you is that if someone puts in their notice,
Yep.
I'm happy for them and we're going to move on. If someone comes in and says, "Look, I've got this offer from this other place," then we have a conversation. But if they've
Yeah.
made up their mind, I want folks who
Yeah.
are committed. We're all
Yeah.
replaceable. I've found that
Right.
I'm certainly replaceable. Everyone here is replaceable. And, I think that's actually kind of liberating. If I get hit by a bus
Yeah.
tomorrow, I think this business will be just fine. I'm
Yeah.
hoping it doesn't happen, but it will be just
Yeah.
fine because everyone
Well,
here
I'm
is
sure your wife and
replaceable.
kids don't want that to happen.
Well, depending on where I am in the insurance, I got to look at my insurance, but I think I'm more valuable alive now than dead. But for a while, it was not that way. Yeah, so I want committed folks. I'm looking for certain traits that are probably different than what your typical folks in this world are looking for, because these are smart people, but they have a lot. It isn't just IQ. The EQ piece is so valuable, and that's the intuitive piece. Because when you're on a call with a buyer, you have to be actively listening. It's not just what they
Yeah.
say; it's how they say it, and that's how you get out in front of problems, because you know how people work. You can read people
Yeah.
really well. That's what
So
I'm
are
looking
you
for.
you're actively recruiting at the Florida universities. It sounds, so that's
Yeah.
how they find you. What if they're okay? So what if they're not going to any of those? They're at another firm or someplace else. How do they apply to Benchmark?
Yeah, so we have a portal that's easy to find. We're very easy to find on LinkedIn. We've got a very fancy looking website that allows you to apply for open jobs, and we get
Okay.
people coming into us all the time. So it seems like it's well known that we're actively hiring really all the time. We're looking for great people. My view has always been the time to hire somebody who's a really quality person is when they're in front of you. That sounds ridiculous, but what that means is the time is not to hire them when you need them, because when you need them, they won't be there, right? So whether you have a role for them or not, if they're outstanding and you think they're going to work, you hire them and you figure out how to slot them in. And that's always been my mentality. So we're always recruiting. I've hired people that I thought were just perfect folks for us, and I didn't even know where. And by the time they got here, inevitably someone will have moved on, right? It almost always happens. Like, we don't have a lot of attrition, but when I make
Yeah.
that judgment call that this guy's, I have someone, Madison, who's really, really good on our team, and I hired her. I wasn't sure I had a spot for her, but she was so outstanding, I had to hire her. And obviously it worked out really, really well. She's still here. And we've got other folks like that too. Just, you hire them when they're in front of you, not when you need them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good life lesson, right? For those running an investment bank or M&A shop, right?
Or any business, really. I mean, as long as you can support, again, like not everyone can do that, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a
Right.
very small business and you can't afford, that load plus the benefit, I get it. But if you've got
Yeah.
a thriving business that's growing, and you find someone and you think they would be great in your business, you just don't have a slot. I encourage people all the time to just pull the trigger. I guarantee you, if they're that quality, you will find a slot for them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's some great advice. Some great advice right there. Especially if you're, have at least have some scale, right? Some scale. They don't have to be, if you're,
Right.
uh, you know, 50, 100 person firm, right? You'll find some place for that person because you're absolutely right, right? Especially with the employment market being so tight.
Exactly. Exactly. And I did it even in other markets, but totally, especially now, if
Yeah,
when they present
yeah,
themselves and they really want to be there, find a place, man. Just find
yeah,
find a
uh,
slot for them. Just give them some work. I've invented internal tasks for people just to keep them busy, keep them hungry, keep them intellectually
yeah,
curious. Really, you want to massage that. You want to, encourage that activism, that engagement of their brain. So,
yeah.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Talk about the last one or two questions here about the culture of Benchmark. Do you do reviews of people? Do you get together with them? Do you have, you know, annual parties? What do you do? Oh, well, you come to an M&A advisor event and
Yeah,
celebrate the deal, right?
we
At
do.
the
We
Leadership and
do.
Filmmaking International M&A Awards. So that's one place you can celebrate.
We do. We certainly do. We do all of those things. Yeah. So I think our culture is. I think we actually get a lot of credit for our culture, and we should. We invest into it. I think we know what culture is and what culture isn't. Culture isn't giving unlimited days off and scooters around the office. It's about shared beliefs and values, and I think we know what we are. We wear suits every day. That's it's a big part of our culture, right? Because, you know, our, our image, that what we want to portray to the world, because we are a marketing company, right? Our job is to market these businesses and find them,
Yep.
a really good home, right? We're looking for caretakers of their legacy and their life's work. So we want to demonstrate that we care a lot about, how we present ourselves to the world, and we're going to care at least as much about how we present you. So the suit is a big part of that. And we're also in the office. We don't do flex time, right? We're in the office. We're better. We're better together. We've got a lot of young people. This is where young people come and collect and they find their friends and their peers and their future spouses. And it's so important for young people to not be sitting at home in a tank top, and a keyboard. Like,
Yep.
I think that's going to be, that's going to be a real hole in our society in about 15 years where we find these folks
Yeah.
who lost that socialization. So we really believe in that. We've committed to real estate, dramatically. We're an incredible, class A plus office space here in Tampa, and all of our buildings around the world are really high end because we believe in that, right? It's a part of our culture. We also celebrate wins. It's really important. So every time we close a deal, that month or the following month, the team will go out and has a budget to go out and celebrate. It's really, really important, we think. These are hard fought, so we celebrate those
Yep.
wins. It's little things like we bring in bagels, probably once or twice a month. We'll bring bagels in because we want, people to feel like we care about them because we do. Tomorrow we'll shut down a little early and we're casual because of Labor Day. That's a part of our culture. The day I shouldn't say this out loud, but pretty much without fail, the day before a Labor Day or a Thanksgiving, those kinds of days, we're always going to shut down a little early. We're always going to be casual. That's kind of a big part
Well, it's
of what
good.
we
You
do.
don't have to wear the tie. You don't have to wear the jacket. It's okay. Fine.
That's
The
right.
rest of
That's
the
right.
world,
Believe me,
rest of the world gave it up. So that's good that you're
well,
keeping it at least four and
th-
a half days of the before the week of a holiday, right?
that's right. So that's our culture. We don't overwork these folks. I mean, I think the notion of a 2 a.m. rule that you're seeing in the city. There's no one here. I get here around 7. I leave around 6. Yeah, I'm home for dinner every night with my family. I am. It's really important to us. That work life balance. No one here
Yeah.
is burning the midnight hour here at all. It's just not part of what we do. We didn't come. I came from the Northeast. I came to Florida for a different approach.
Right.
Right. I don't
Right.
want to wait until I'm retired to enjoy my life. So, and the folks down here also view it that way. So no one here is working 80-hour work weeks. We just don't have that. They're working really hard and productively. We leverage systems. We've got, a huge spend into our systems to be a real lever. So we get these incredible outcomes, but we do it by huge deal teams, a big spend on technology, and folks who are truly bought in into what we're trying to achieve here, not by working them 100 hours a week.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've used up a lot of your time today on your journey on Benchmark, how you got to Benchmark and the culture and how to work at Benchmark. So is there anything that, I didn't cover or anything that you want to provide some advice to some of the emerging leaders, perhaps listening in?
No, that's great. I talk to young people every day. It's one of my favorite things to do. They're so wide eyed and bushy tailed and excited. Right. It's occurred to me the other day, and I'm sure others have said something similar, but it just occurred to me that there's a couple things you can give to an employer, right? This, if you just boil it down, there's expertise and there's time.
Yep.
And early in your career, you've got a lot of one and hardly any of the other, right? So you have a lot of time that you can give and only a little of expertise, but it's a continuum. It's almost like an indifference curve in microeconomics, but not really the same. But it is a continuum. You could really plot it. And as you advance in your career, you have more sort of challenges, more demands on your time, right? I have a wife, I've got two kids, they require and I'm happy to provide time to them. I enjoy spending time with them. I really do. And so I can't spend 80, 90 hours a week in the office. But
Right.
when you're younger, you don't have those demands. So, I'd
Yep.
encourage people early in their career to really commit time
Yep.
to perfecting their craft and achieving that level of expertise because later on in their career, as they advance, when they're giving less time to a
Yep.
role, they're still making a huge impact on the company because they've acquired all this expertise, right? So
Yep.
you kind of move from being heavy on time, low on expertise to heavy
Yep.
on expertise and very little on time. And I think but it requires that huge investment that I'm hoping that young people are willing to put in. I think that's really
Yep.
just absolutely critical. And then the other thing I would say for young people is it's build a personal brand and then plot a 5-year course. Like, here's where I am now. Here's where I want to get to and plot that course. And then in terms of professional development, no one's going to drag you along, right? This is a car that you're driving. I'm happy to be a mentor. Look for mentors. Happy to help,
Yep.
but I'm
Yep.
not going to develop you. That's not my job.
Yep.
Now I would
Now
love
you
developing.
had a mentor. I mean, we didn't cover this, but
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it. You had a mentor over at the VC firm. How important? I mean, obviously, it's very important. To have a mentor or find mentors. But um, I would, I think what you're saying is, you, the mentors don't find you. You have to find your mentor and
Right.
volunteer and request that time because the mentor doesn't want to waste his or her time on someone who doesn't want to be mentored, right?
That's exactly right. So I'm willing to put considerable hours into helping folks on my team, the friends, kids, I am, but I'm not going to drag them through it. Like they've got to pull me into it. Right. And that's the lesson that I've given to I've done blog posts internally here on this several times. Like you can't be a passenger in this journey. You've got to be driving and then pull me along. And, Walt Robb, who was my mentor, he was an incredible mentor, but I had to go to him. I had to go to him and say, "Help me understand this," or "How can I achieve this?" And I had the plan, and he would poke holes in it, so I changed the plan.
Yeah.
But he would always be there to help, and that's who I want to be. I want to be helpful, but I'm certainly not going to carve out the plan. I'm not going to pull people along in their own development. It's got to be on you. If it's not self-directed, it's not going to happen.
Right. 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 Well, listen, this has been an incredible discussion, Dara, on your career benchmark and the value of mentorship. I really appreciate the time. Congratulations on Benchmark being recognized at the International M&A Awards this September. You have been recognized many years over the past decade, maybe even longer
Yep.
on there. So I look forward to continuing the conversation, perhaps at the Leadership and Deal Making Summit, and recognizing you and your firm for the work you've done.
Well, I appreciate we love your events. It's a great opportunity to exchange thoughts with folks who can really empathize with your plight. Folks who
Yeah,
know what we do every day
yeah.
and know the trials and travails, and you don't have to explain to them what you do for a living. So for a young person, I'd encourage them all to attend these events. a lot of horsepower in the room, and a lot of folks who can really serve as potential mentors. And
Yeah.
it's definitely a great event. All of your events are great events, and we look forward to them every year.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I do want to say that, I mean, although Benchmark, it sounds like you have a budget to celebrate each and every deal after it closes. Many firms don't do that anymore, right? When I was a young analyst at Merrill Lynch decades ago, we would have the closing dinner, right? You would
Yeah,
have the closing
right.
party, closing that. And nowadays, people are signing, the documents by DocuSign, and you get
Yeah,
the wire goes into, and then that's it. But then,
right.
people have used sort of an M&A Advisor Awards as their closing party, their closing dinner, because they would get the buyers, the sellers, the lawyers, the accountants all in one room, and the investment bankers, the PE firm, all sort of at a table or two to celebrate. And, we find that sometimes people use the M&A Advisor Awards as sort of the way to get everybody, an excuse to get everybody together in one place and celebrate.
No, it's a great idea. I mean, we've certainly brought,
Yeah.
for one of our big wins, we brought the attorney who, from on the deal with us, and he brought his wife, and it was just a great opportunity to recap
Yeah.
on a deal that
Yeah.
had happened, 6, 7 months ago. These are really hard fought. A lot of
Yeah.
effort goes into them, and it is great to celebrate them. That I think you're right. They've largely gone away. These big celebrations, the closing dinners, but we try to celebrate them internally, if we can. And if there's a closing dinner to be had, we'll attend sometimes, and they are a lot of fun. But you do end up being very transactional about this stuff, right? That's how we're wired. We move on to the next one.
Yeah.
We celebrate for the quick win, congratulate everybody, and we mean it, and then we're on to the next one. And that sometimes that happens in a few minutes.
Yeah, that's the nature of the deal business. So listen, as sort of the creator and CEO of the M&A Advisor with these awards, I'm actually very proud, and my mother is too, but very proud of getting, hundreds of people, scores of deal teams together to celebrate, right, in one big night of and meeting and connecting with other people. So again,
Yeah,
congratulations. Look forward
thank you.
to sharing the evening with you, and good luck to everything over at Benchmark.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it, and congratulations for all you've done.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Rob. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new from it. If you have any questions or comments for us or any of our guests, please feel free to leave them in the podcast platform of your choice, or send us an email at editor@maadvisor.com. We would love to hear from you and get your feedback. And if you haven't done so already, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and subscribe to our M&A Alerts newsletter at the links in the description, or on our website at www.maadvisor.com. This will help you stay updated on the latest M&A interviews and trends, and support our podcast to grow and reach more listeners like you. This is Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and founder of the M&A Advisor. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our M&A Advisor community. Until next time, stay safe and happy dealing.